Welcome, Backyard Baseball fans, young and old. My name is Roberto Clementine.
And I am Dick Butkus.
We're here with all of your backyard baseball analysis, and there's a lot to analysis. We've got the draft, trades, league play coming up, interleague play up to this point, a full gamut, as you could say.
There's so much to scrutinize, so much to go over, and hopefully today we can cover even just a little bit of all we want to do.
Let's start scratching the surface, shall we?
Let's do it.
The draft. I've got a couple observations from the draft that I want to talk about. We already talked about the average that players went for free agency, but a couple things that were just really sticking out to me was, one, how high Curt Schilling went in both drafts.
Interesting, because Curt Schilling really offers no offensive ability and is definitely above par on the mound, but longevity in games, that's my big question mark.
Speed on the base pass, big question mark.
Another one.
Yeah,
Yes.
Curt Schilling going for 31 to the Astros in the National League, and then going number 2 overall in the draft in the American League to the Detroit Tigers. So
Which we'll see how PM Noah can handle Curt Schilling. I think it's about workload. It's about how you utilize him on the mound as to how effective he can be for your club over the season.
And we saw the Houston Astros, of course, sending Randy Johnson away. So then there's no longer that 2-ace dilemma there on the Astros.
Right.
I don't know how that goes.
Right.
Andy Frazier as well, going number 5 overall in the American League draft to the Monsters.
Surprised?
Yeah, I was. I've made the mistake before, but I won't do it again. But
Yep.
I think that the Monsters realized what they'd done, and they tried to make a deal to consolidate that move as best as they could.
Yes.
And then I also want to note the disparity between where the creative player went in both drafts. So creative player going number 20 overall in the National League draft to the Expos, but then going for free agency to the Athletics. And that really surprised me, the kind of value that Paul McMichael places on that created player.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, to note how that created player gets used. You know, for each PM who drafts that created player, they've got their plan, whether it's having the increase in speed, having him be more of a power bat, being the best defender possible for that squad. So very interesting to see that approach versus where they took them in the draft.
And we can talk about draft position and where people went all day long, but a lot has happened since then.
Yes, the draft is now behind us.
Behind us. And the trades that have taken place have changed the look of the rosters pretty totally.
Drastically.
Let's talk
Yes.
about trades.
So one of the first things that stuck out to me with trades was just Expos and Hornets, right? Vlad for Canseco. I felt like that was a pretty even trade, though I was never really sold on Vlad completely. I think Canseco might have been a little better deal in that regard. But again, we'll see what they can do mid-season, how they produce, how they perform, and in retrospect, we'll see how that trade paid off.
Yeah, talking with those player managers, I know that Pat Cook of the Hornets was looking for a little bit more of a dynamic bat, and I think he got that in Canseco over Vlad. But Vlad has the much better arm over Canseco, so he gets to keep that speed, and I believe that the Expos are putting Vlad behind the plate to stop any base-stealing threats.
Yeah, definitely. Monsters gave Andy Frazier and Cement Gardens to the Blue Jays in exchange for Pudge and Dirt Yards. I know Pudge is, do you want anybody else behind the plate besides Pudge Rodriguez? But definitely interested by the field trade there with Cement Gardens being more of that box, not being able to hit home runs. Dirt Yards, right, having ground balls be then a factor into play. So what are your thoughts on that trade?
I think that Ivan Rodriguez is the better player, but we've talked about speed a lot, so I don't know, maybe that's just the trade-off is the great arm and the ability to hit against Andy Frazier, who can run, but her stats are grossly overrated
Sure.
for the way that she can hit the ball. So I think that to each his own on that trade. Personally, I wouldn't have taken Andy Frazier.
Yeah, we'll see how that pays off for him. The Fishes gave Nomar and Gwynn to the Mariners for Kendall and Beltran. Some big names coming out in that trade. I think that trade was put out by Stephen A. Smith from ESPN. Broke the news as we knew it initially, just because of those big names. And I don't know, initially feedback from me, I think, for Nomar and Gwynn, that's a good matchup, right? Nomar's got some great contact ability. On the opposite end, I think Beltran is also a great asset for a team. I think Beltran can be good on the base pass. But we'll see how that pays off for both the Fishes and the Mariners.
So you would say Nomar and Gwynn, you like that end of the deal better than Kendall and was the other person on that trade, Kendall and
Beltran, right. So I see Kendall as more of a liability. There's been some rumors going around, too, just about the kind of clubhouse guy that Kendall is. Kind of a cancer just for other guys. So ultimately, I think post-All-Star break, we'll look back and analyze this trade and see that they got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, I like Kendall and Beltran in that trade personally, but we're going to find out.
Yes, we will.
Rosters on the whole, some just different observations we've got for each team at first glance. Blue Jays there, Tyler Etter. Well, we haven't really seen them get put to work yet. We've seen a lot of struggles with that clubhouse, getting them all on the field, and I know that Tyler's working hard to get those players back in the mindset of winning ball games.
Yeah, I think there's been some rumors, too, of just some contract holdouts, players on strike, not wanting to show up to the clubhouse. Hopefully the PM can get those things ironed out and get the boys back on the field.
Yep. So, I see a lot of emphasis on batting and all the way top to bottom except for Randy Johnson. Everybody on that team can hit in some respect where there's power for contact. But there's also not much speed on that team once you get past the first three.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about hitting, I think we got to look at the next team, the Tigers, right, with Noah. Obviously acquiring arguably the best player in backyard baseball in Pablo Sanchez, having that power at the plate with a good mix of speed too, right? Kenny Lofton, Reese Worthington, that's a good little matchup for some feet on the base path. But we'll see, because I know he's got Ekman Akers. So we'll see how that pays off for him and Pablo.
And just got a text from Paul McMichael, and we're going to get to have him here on the show here in just a little bit. So pretty excited for that.
Very cool.
But next we'll go to Noah and the Tigers. No surprise there with Pablo Sanchez and Kenny Lofton, the big spender in free agency. Again, more of an emphasis on hitting than on speed. There's some slower players in there like Giambi and Piazza and Mikey Thomas. So same approach there. Devil Rays, Jacob. I'm running scared from the Devil Rays, and part of what just cements his position in the league and his competitive nature is that he's not willing to trade. He's been approached by other PMs, and he's told them, "I'm holding Pat on my roster. I'm not doing anything."
Right. Well, I think the obvious question for me is why would he want to trade?
Yeah.
Right. If you look at that lineup and you look at some of that, what I call the core four here, right? So you got Mondesi, Jr., Juan, Ripken Jr., right? And if you look at his run differential too, so far through 3 weeks, he's put up 30, which is a tied in the American League for most run differentials with the Bombers at 30 as well too. So if I'm in his shoes, trade deadline's tonight, there is no reason to want him to move out, right? You're starting off hot, you have a big run differential, your core group of guys are there, everything's in place.
But the one thing I do want to note before we move on from that is that even though he's come out strong, the Bombers have come out strong, nobody has proven immune to this more difficult format. So they've got both 2 big wins here in the first 3 weeks of the season, but the Bombers turned in a 3 spot, and the Devil Rays eked out a 3-3 tie against the Melonheads. So I think that's one thing we anticipated.
Yeah.
But then after the Devil Rays posted their scores from week 1 and 2, we thought, are they going to be able to do this every single week? Well,
right.
I think it's a matter of capitalizing on the games where things are rolling, but you're still going to have to fight for some of those.
Yeah.
Some of those games.
Definitely. So next in line, too, we have the Mariners.
Yeah.
The PM Andrew. I don't know about you, but first thing that stuck out to me were 2 key players in Pete Wheeler and then in Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Right? That's a good 1-2 punch, offensive, defensive. I think we all can attest to the fact that Randy is a machine on the mound. His heater is almost unhittable. And Pete, man, you put that ball in play, it's tough to put him out, any bag he goes to.
And Andrew's a guy with the Mariners who his team makeup has changed quite a bit since he started out of the draft. So the Louis for Canseco trade, sacrificing some power for some speed, but you can kind of see that theme there with Pete Wheeler and Keisha Phillips.
Right.
And then Louis, that's kind of the speed trifecta there, along with Vicky Kawaguchi, but that maybe not the same offensive potential as the top half of that lineup.
Right.
But
Yeah.
That's a pretty fast lineup. Brad, the Monsters, man, there's a lot to talk about there.
I mean, just the trade line blowing up from Brad reaching out, taking the initiative, staying hot.
That's right.
On the phone.
Brad's not scared to talk to anybody, but I sure am scared to talk to him. So again, we've got a little bit of speed there at the top end. Gonzalez and then Rodriguez. He's made some deals for power, so traded away Sean Green for Jeff Bagwell, getting a little bit more pop at the plate. And then it's talked about trying to get Dmitry Petrovic somewhere else. But where's the weak spot on that team? What do you think?
I think that's Ronnie Dobbs. You know, Ronnie's a good kid, right? But at the end of the day, I think just producing, right, being able to contribute to a club, that's kind of that weak link.
Derek and the Bombers, power, power, power. No big surprise. You were talking earlier about Amir Khan and whether he's measured up to expectations or not. Compare him against his brother when they've got the same stat line.
Yeah, so I think for the Bombers, the biggest outlier and learning that has happened is just a difference in the brothers, right? So Ahmed has that more pure power form, whereas Amir has more of that power and hitting and contact and driving the baseball. So I think just learning those strengths and better knowing how to operate with those is going to be key to success moving forward.
There's no surprise that they've been able to put the pieces together at home, away. At least so far, it's been a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, so I actually heard from the Bombers PM, Derek, just a little bit ago, too. He had mentioned that at home, you know, with Ernie Steele, that's definitely a plus for him, right? And having that short porch and center is a nice caveat when you've got guys like Sosa, like Ahmed, someone like Sal, or even Mo Vaughn, who have the potential to drive the baseball over that short porch and center. So we'll see if that power continues to hold strong and if he makes any sort of adjustments in his lineup moving forward.
And we're going to move on and talk about Paul and the Athletics. Let me get him on the phone here.
Sure.
Take a look at his lineup. What do you think there?
Yeah, let's open up the line, get Paul on. I think looking at his lineup, the custom player, having Vlad, a couple of good pieces. Ashley Weber, in particular, is somebody who I think might be a good contributor on the low end of the totem pole there.
Hey, Paul McMichael, this is Roberto Clementine along with my partner Dick Buttkiss, and we have a couple questions for you about your roster here coming out of the gate the first 3 weeks of this backyard baseball season.
Yep, pleasure to be on with you guys.
We wanted to look at week one and the loss that you had to the Hornets and then your past couple weeks of performance. What changed between weeks one and the following weeks?
I think the big thing for us was playing at Tin Can Alley. Week two was a road game at the Fishes, and Jeremiah's squad has Tin Can Alley as its home field. Really liked how that suited my roster outfitting. Helps my speed a lot. It keeps the other team in the ballpark. And when I realized how much I liked the alley, I decided to go out and acquire it.
Hey, Paul, Dick Buttkiss here. Quick question for you. So now that we've been through 3 weeks of play and you've had a better chance to analyze your speed, given your success last year, how do you make any changes moving forward to the speed that you've incorporated in your lineup for being successful in the future?
Yeah, I think speed is definitely something that was a key to victory for the Athletics last year. Our organization has always looked at acquiring players like Luan Louis, custom player that has 10 speed. It's a little bit tougher this season because of the arms that are on the infield. So the important thing for us this year is to kind of spread out what power we do have in the lineup so that if those fast runners get on base, we have some runners behind that can drive them in.
Tell me a little bit about your thoughts during the this trade bonanza that's been taking place in the past 3 weeks. What's been your concept of the market? What have trades looked like for you? And do you see yourself making any deal as the deadline approaches?
Yeah, I think that the trading has been a ton of fun. It's been great to see guys get after it and really try to make a move that improves their roster. I think what makes it fun and what makes the trade bonanza possible is having two different leagues. And a lot of the trades that have been across the American and National League line. I think what makes it difficult is that when you're a player manager, you know the value of the guys on your team. I'll give you an example. I love Jeremy Burness, and I think he's a great player. I figured out how to hit with him. He plays first base for me, has a great arm. So I know that most guys wouldn't want Burnitz, and I understand that, but I really like him a lot. So, his value is much higher to me than what another guy would see in him if he's involved in a deal.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we were just talking about clubhouse guys too, and the importance of team chemistry. It sounds like Jeremy might be one of those guys that would be a key factor for your lineup. Hey, give us a prediction here. Post All-Star break, where do you see your squad lining up with record post All-Star break?
I'm hoping to land in that 2 or 3 spot. As I look around the American League, I think kind of. The outlook is that the Bombers and the Devil Rays are putting up big numbers so far. 4 teams have put up double digits so far. The Bombers, Devil Rays, the Athletics, and the Expos. So, the top end of that ceiling is pretty high for those 2 other squads, and I haven't hit those numbers even in practice. So, I think the Bombers and Devil Rays have a really good shot. They're undefeated, and now I already have a loss, so I'm already 1 down there. But if I can get in that 2nd spot, I would be really happy, because then I could have Tin Can Alley for 2 of 3 games in the league semifinal.
And that's a good point. The control this year in the playoffs, in your home field advantage that just wasn't there last year, and then that can make a big difference into the postseason, not just in a single game.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, makes a huge difference for me at Tin Can Alley. I know. You look at the Bombers, and Bombers put up double digits the 2 games they were at Steel, and single digits in the game when they were away from home. And I'm not exactly sure why they did. I think that every team is going to be a little bit inconsistent because you only have 6 innings to work with, but home field advantage is a big deal.
Yeah.
For the playoffs this year.
I'm going to let you go here in just a second, but I want to give you the chance if you want to make any amendments to your beginning of the season predictions that you published a few weeks ago after the draft. Do you feel like those predictions hold steady here 3 games in, or anything else you want to add?
At this point, I'll hold steady. I think we have seen some pretty interesting early developments. Definitely, predicted the Bombers winning it all, and so far they've been putting up huge numbers. Called the Devil Rays being the Rookie of the Year, and so far that looks really good. I think they have a great shot. Hornets have been okay. Probably overvalued them in my preseason predictions, so they really need to kind of turn it up there, and so far the Expos look to be the strongest team in the NL.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your valuable analysis and also your honesty about your own squad. I think it makes you unique as a player manager to give just an honest look at your roster and then just try to get the most you can out of the players you have.
Yeah, best of luck this year to you, Paul, and to your club, the Athletics.
Thanks, guys.
Paul McMichael, classy as always.
That's right.
I know that he is inside maybe thinking day and night about how he can get those Devil Rays and Bombers under his shoe, but I appreciate his approach.
Yeah, he's a savvy PM, too. I'm sure that he will figure things out and make the needed adjustments and changes as the season goes on.
Over to the National League, quickly, Melonheads, Jonah Colvin, I think that they've been the really pleasant surprise so far. He wouldn't talk about them there at all in that National League conversation, but they haven't had any kind of gaudy numbers, but last year was just real rough for them, and we've seen them beat the Tigers, beat the Blue Jays, and then tie the Devil Rays, which, oh man, that would have been just really cool for the National League for him to pull out that win, but it was a great game.
Yeah, definitely good to see the learning curve adjust there from year to year, and I think that the upside for Jonah and the Melonheads is very high moving forward.
Yeah. All right, the Expos, we saw that free agency strategy where getting 4 players in free agency and then just having kind of depth of roster. There have been some moves there, like we said, Canseco for Vlad. So Vlad came to the Expos, but then got Canseco back in the trade for Luan Louis. You see him coming back and valuing power over speed a little bit more after the draft. And what do you think about them?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some good quality key players there. I like Vlad. I think that Sean Green is one of the more underrated players to be added to any rosters. Canseco's great too. I think you put the Weber sisters in there as well, right?
Yep.
They can go unnoticed as a good combination of backyard kids, parallel even with the Cons and how they operate, how they add to club chemistry, and what that means for that ball club.
Yep, we talked about Derek and the Astros already a little bit. A lot of power on that team.
Yep.
I know that in trade talks, there were some player managers thinking they could go after Mark McGuire for cheap, and that's just not the case because Derek really likes him. He's really hitting well with him.
Which is interesting because I think last year McGuire underperformed for his PM. Definitely what I consider to be average power at the plate. When he makes contact, the contact is there. But I don't know if as much on defense he can be as reliable as a player.
Yep, and I think that they've been pretty pleased so far with their run differential and how it's just improved in the first 3 weeks. Derek and the Rockies, man, they looked good after the draft. I think they're still trying to put some things together. Not anything to be ashamed of by any means, but I'm looking forward to seeing a couple big numbers from them this season with the power that's on that club.
Yeah, I think Larry Walker feels right at home too. You know, just this air about him as if he feels that someday as an adult he might end up playing for the Rockies. He just feels right at home being with that club.
Yeah, the Bronx Street Bombers already in the making. Wasso's Wombats. I got to admit, this roster is just one of the funniest to me. I have to be honest that it's just polar opposites in a lot of places. So you got Mikey Thomas, kind of the one-hit wonder, with no wheels to back it up,
right?
And then Vicky Kawaguchi, like his perfect complement, and that kind of just describes that roster.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do post All-Star break once he gets his wheels on his cart with just moving as a club together, a cohesive unit, right? Putting like you said, all those different aspects in players, and how do you manage that as a PM? How do you utilize the differences to work together to be one united strength?
And you can tell he's starting to put it together because he's had quite the growth trend, even though he hasn't won a backyard game yet. He's gone from -18 to -7 to -1. So I feel maybe success is right around the corner for his roster if he figures out how to just put his lineup together.
Definitely, yes.
All right, Jeremiah and the Fishes. We talked about some of their moves earlier on. Another Ahmed and Amir Khan combination really went after Ahmed in free agency, and they have by no means had any kind of poor showing here in the first few weeks. So I get the indication that he, like Paul McMichael, is just kind of getting a feel for his guys. So that 8 run differential week 1, 5 week 2, I think that they're going to continue being the National League conversation for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like the Fishes as a whole just out of the gate had been working as a cohesive unit. And I like that about their ball club.
Hornets. So we just got off the phone talking with Paul McMichael about the Hornets. Man, I want to see some big stuff out of them, and I know that Pat Cook does as well. He's been talking about how good Ken Griffey Jr. has been in these first few games, but just that's not enough to carry the team. Can't put the whole team on his back to beat some of these difficult opponents.
That's right. You have to rely on guys like Walker and Mondesi and Green to be able to carry that workload, especially defensively. You look at just one player cannot do everything, right? So those other pieces to the puzzle need to step up, need to perform and perform at a high level.
So here we go. We're headed towards league play.
Yep.
This is when things get really, really real. Anything stick out to you as we've looked at records, run differentials, and the upcoming schedule that you expect to see take part season?
Yeah, I think just initially, too, out of the gate, we try to avoid injuries, right? I know kids can get tired pretty fast.
Got to be careful.
Having bye weeks is extremely important. I know that next week, the bye week is for the Bombers and the Rockies. But it'll be good. Give the kids a rest, give their arms a rest, allow them to come back fresh in week 5. It's interesting to see, too, just how much of a factor defense plays into run differential, right?
Absolutely.
I think this really plays a role in just being the ultimate teacher for PMs for next year's draft, right? Taking a look at, okay, well, I drafted more on the defensive side, but I still gave up a couple of runs and couldn't perform offensively, which lowered my overall run differential, and vice versa. How do you compensate? Which one do you lean on more? And how do you maximize your squad to have the biggest run differential possible?
The trade deadline is coming and going, and it's just going to be a matter of playing your best baseball against the opponent that week.
Yep.
Just looking ahead a little bit to some of those matchups that I think are going to be a lot of fun. I say watch out for Monsters, Devil Rays. I think that the Monsters are going to start coming into their own a little bit there week 4, so I'm pretty excited about that. And then we'll see if the Rockies can use that bye week to maybe get some practice in or rest up and come back a little bit in the following weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to see down the road, too. I think it's going to be looking at week 9. The Bombers and Devil Rays will have a head-to-head matchup at the Devil Rays Stadium,
huge.
right? So we talked about sometimes the benefit of being at home. If that continues on the course that it has so far with run differential and record in that league, the American League, it'll be interesting to see what that matchup looks like away at the Devil Rays home field.
I believe that's going to do it for us tonight in our post-draft and trade deadline analysis. Quick parting shots. Any trade deals that you've heard about rumored that you think might come about close to the close of this trade deadline?
Nothing specific, but I have heard rumor that the PM Brad has been hands hot on the phone, dialing off the phone, looking to trade away some players to get some last-minute key pieces.
I've heard about the Athletics being involved in some trade talks where he's taken some of his roster players off the table in other deals. Nothing has materialized quite yet, but I have a feeling that the trade deadline is going to come with another deal. It won't come and go quietly, but I don't think we'll see any more than a couple teams make a deal.
And the National League has been
deadline's
pretty quiet from what I've heard too from trade deals. So it looks like that book has been pretty much closed.
All right. We're going to turn our attention then to league play, but that doesn't mean we're going to turn our attention from analyzing the heck out of Backyard Baseball 2019. This is Roberto Clementine.
And this is Dick Butkus. It's been a pressure and an obligation.